What mistake should have killed you? One time when I was young and carefree, I was riding a motorcycle for maybe the second time, like 30 miles per hour, and just had some wires in my brain misfire. I was like, I wonder what would happen if I crossed my arms and held the left handlebar with my right hand, the right with my left. I'll tell you what happened. I just narrowly missed oncoming traffic and smacked right into a wall. I stumbled through a bush which had a 1 meter drop after it where I fell down. I landed on my back at the only place down there which didn't have a iron pole sticking out of the ground. When I was in high school, me and a few friends all lied to our parents and told them we were spending the night at each other's houses. What we had really done was backpacked up a snowy Idaho mountain in the middle of winter without telling anyone where we were going. We were all fairly inexperienced in winter backpacking. The friend in charge of bringing food brought chicken he'd cooked at home, so we could eat it cold in case we couldn't start a fire. Luckily I'd brought a can of chili and didn't partake in the chicken. I woke up the following morning to a fresh foot of snow and my friends vomiting out of the tent. We'd left our boots outside and they were completely frozen through. The shoelaces of my boot were pointing up and out and had zero bend. Me and one other friend, we are not sick and had to pack up the tent. The most freezing cold work I've ever done. I gave one of my sick friends my gloves because he couldn't find his. We were about 3 miles into the hike and the trail we'd taken in was totally covered and none of us were familiar with it enough to know it by memory. I took all but one pack and ran down trail to the car, making my best guess on which way to turn and marking those choices with ski poles. Got to the car, started it up to get it warm and to check if we had cell reception. We didn't. And then I ran back up trail to where they were and we carried them back to the car. I got home and felt like total garbage. My entire body was on fire from the cold and the soreness. I felt freezing to my bones, and when I got home I started puking and was pastel white and sickly looking. My dad was pissed at me because I was hungover and I opted for that punishment rather than the insane fury it would have caused if he knew why I was actually in my condition. I remember organizing my room when I was 10 or so. I had a lava lamp on the verge of falling of my cabinet. I didn't notice until I heard a loud chatter on my floor. For some reason my brain thought it would be a good idea to pick up all the shards. I jabbed my foot with a huge piece of glass and passed out from the pain. Woke up in a hospital bed thinking it and realized the shard was gone from my foot, was stitched back up and getting relieved looks from my family. Turns out when I passed out, I hit my head on the cement floor. I was living in my parents' basement and cracked my skull partially open and was bleeding profusely. I got taken to the hospital. My family thought I was dead. Taking on a plus 70 hours a week job just for the money. I hated the job. I hated my boss and I hated myself. I could not look myself in the mirror anymore. I was this close to a heart attack, gained 60 kilograms, and could hardly sleep, but every month plus 12k on the bank account made me get up again and again. My wife said either you quit or I walk. Really saved my life. Dove into a pool and broke my neck at the sea-to level. Hangman fracture it's called. I was so drunk I thought I just pulled a muscle or something, so I kept partying. There's pictures of me with a bag of frozen peas on my neck grilling, taking a shot from an ice luge, etc. all while my fucking neck was broken once the disc popped out because I was playing chicken with someone on my shoulders in the same pool hours later. That's when I realized that maybe something was wrong. 1 emergency spinal fusion surgery, 5 days in the hospital, 3 months bedridden, medical discharge from the army, RIP that career, and I'm good as new. I totally should be dead or paralyzed. Doing heroin alone in my room without letting anybody know. I consider that to almost be a surefire way to accidentally kill yourself due to Vancouver's opioid crisis. I remember waking up with my back on my bed and a needle still in my arm. I was out for half an hour. I woke up feeling terrified and knew that this wasn't a life I wanted anymore. Now I'm a week sober. Might not sound like a lot, but quitting from $100 a day heroin habit to cold turkey meant that I was not a happy camper during my detox, but I stuck it out, and I'm proud of myself. Not wearing a helmet while on a bicycle and stupidly turning left just as a car overtook me. Somehow I only got a neat scar through my eyebrow and some torn up kneecaps from it. but the look on my mother's face when she picked me up from the hospital, that made me realize how profoundly stupid I was that day. Passed out in the woods after running from the cops. I was at a party in college and decided I was done, so I started walking home. Got like half a mile from campus when a cop pulled over to talk to me. It was like 3 AM and my drunk ass can't walk in a straight line on the sidewalk. My instant drunk reaction to seeing the blue lights was to bolt into the woods at full speed. Naturally I can't see what obstacles are in my way, so at some point I had tried to either climb a fence or run through thorn bushes. Eventually I ran headfirst into a tree and fell down. I had probably the most absurd thought I've ever had. If I hold my breath the cops can't see where I am. So I did that and passed out while lying on my back in the woods. I woke up a few hours later as the sun was coming up and realized I had shredded my clothes and my face/arms looked like I had been attacked by an animal with all the scratches. The worst one being a vertical cut that went lengthwise down the interior of my forearm, starting at my wrist. This was 12 years ago, and I can still see the scar from that particular cut. The rest have healed and faded, but that one is still prominent. Had that been a little deeper I have no doubt I would have bled out while lying on the ground in the woods if I didn't already die from alcohol poisoning. There were probably 3 or 4 things that should have killed me that night but didn't. Carrying a toilet by myself after having painted the bathroom. Got caught up in the drop cloth and fell on the toilet smashing it, and a piece of the porcelain cut into my knee. My father was there with me and immediately took me to the hospital as the bleeding was pretty decent. The doctor told me that the piece missed an artery by 1/4 inches and that if I had been a smaller man I'd have bled out before I made it to the hospital. Being a very large man, 6 feet 2 inches and 350 pounds at the time, saved my life. Car crash at 80 km/h. I hit a car that was going through a red light perpendicular to my direction of travel came to a dead stop after hitting the back quarter panel/wheel of their car whilst they barrel rolled 3 times into the nature strip. I hit the windscreen with my head because I'm 6 feet 5 inches and wasn't wearing a seatbelt because I thought I was top shit. Both myself and the other driver walked away unscathed, which was the most surprising of all. I was taken to the hospital because of my collision with the windscreen, but was released shortly after some scans that came back okay. I don't know what saved me or the other driver that day, but I thought I died for several seconds after the impact and airbags went off, only to realize I was a bit dazed but generally fine, which followed with moments of disbelief and joy. Climbed onto one of those underpasses that allow river water to flow through when I was like 5. Got swept in the current and taken down the river. Only reason I survived is my dad saw my long hair barely under the current and jumped in to save me. My dad got trashed and tried to jump over the fence at Yankee Stadium with his friends. He failed and an iron spike punctured him. He remembers being rushed to the hospital and bleeding everywhere. Everyone thought he was going to die of blood loss. Didn't die, but he also made several more stupid mistakes such as riding a motorcycle without a helmet and breaking several ribs etc etc. Honestly he is still stupid and I'm surprised he hasn't died yet. Well, does pre-existence count? When my mother was pregnant with me, she went to have an abortion, but as she arrived at the doctor office he asked her something along the lines of, "Woman, what are you doing here? Go home. The revolution has begun. They are shooting people." So she went home because it was the start of the Romanian Revolution of 89 feet. So she decided to have me after all. Wasn't a mistake per se, but a chain reaction resulted in my existence. I had a very bad rebellious phase. At one point, I ran away from home for a week and hitchhiked my way across my country along with one of my friends. For context, we were both 15 to 16 at the time. One of the cars that gave us a ride happened to be 2 suspicious looking foreigners, older men, who spoke between themselves in Turkish and only one of them was able to address us in our native tongue. But we were too dumb to realize the red flags. It finally occurred to us when they passed up our exit and refused to let us go when we indicated their mistake. I had to basically fake it, as if my father knew where I was and that he'd be expecting me at a certain spot at a certain time, not even knowing if that would work. It did, miraculously, and they let us go in the middle of nowhere. We had to basically hitch another ride home. Boy, was I stupid. Playing with the laundry chute in my childhood home when I was around 5 years old. My cousins and I took turns dropping things down the chute while someone else stood at the bottom and dodged them. For the most part it was things like washcloths, stuffed animals, a clothing item, etc. Just so happened that when I stood under the chute, my cousin dropped a 5-pound dumbbell down and I, expecting something harmless, didn't get out of the way. That ended the game real quick. I now part my hair in a way that hides the bald spot scar on my head.